let's just yeah. So first off, thank you for the interview, man.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So when I first got the email, the first thing that came to mind was how did he come up with the name the Bones of J.R.
Yeah,
Jones? But first
yeah.
off, is it the Bones of J.R. Jones or just Bones of J.R. Jones?
There is a "the" in front of it, but I'm flexible on it. Yeah. It's one of those things that came up with, geez, 12 years ago now or so, and for better or for worse, it is what it is. I vacillate whether it's worth a darn or not, or whether I should keep it. But the my full name, Jonathan Robert, is the JR side of it, and um, my last name Linneberry just doesn't really roll off the tongue quite as nicely as the Bones of J.R. Jones, and so I kind of wanted to pay homage to something. A lot of the music I write is, in my mind, anyways, is a little ominous and pretty. It has a darker side, darker undertones to it, and so I was trying to come up with something kind of to play with that idea with this with the name, and so the Bones of J.R. Jones was what came up.
See, and that was the thing I noticed with your music is that okay, it's it's these lyrics that are kind of dark, but it's over this beautiful instrumentation that's going on. I believe it's I want to say "Bless Your Soul," where
Oh yeah,
the
yeah.
is just so beautiful, and then I'm just like, oh, this is wonderful.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that song. Yeah.
So my first question is, when it comes to your music, how do you come up with these melodies? How do you come up with like these ideas?
Oh man. Um, I don't know. It's a struggle. I think the melody, and I can only speak to for myself, I guess, as a musician. But like the melody is always the first thing that kind of comes up, that kind of like pops into my head, and I will, you know, use the voice memo app on my phone and constantly just be recording. I like, little like 10-second snippets of what a melody might be.
Mhm.
Um, and sometimes they stay with me, sometimes I forget them or whatever it might be, but like, it's the mood of that melody which I try to capture, and that's why I use the voice memo, because otherwise it's just like psh, it's gone,
Yeah.
like it's just disappears. Even if I'm like, I'll remember this. um, and then the lyrics are truly a labor. I struggle with that. I struggle with that all the time, and it's just something that I don't know. I gravitate towards these themes, I guess, that are a little heavier, and for me, they're a little more impactful, I guess, and that's probably resonant of the music that I listen to, and like what I you know what I'm attracted to as a lyricist and things like that. So yeah. Um,
Nice. And what kind of music do you listen to? Like just on your spare time? Let's
oh
start
man.
with music.
Well, it's horrible to say. I listen to a lot of my own music because at least like because I'm always recording and demoing and writing songs,
Mhm.
and so I'm always like I constantly listen to my own songs till it makes myself sick because I'm trying to like improve on them a little bit. But beyond that, I try to touch the gamut, or run the gamut rather, in terms of all genres. There's obviously like the classics that I always fall back on. I listened to a lot of Tom Waits growing up, and a lot of like older Bruce Springsteen, and like I really fell into the blues in my late teens and early 20s, and a lot of those field recordings, and a lot of like the folk scene that was out of New York, in the 40s and 50s and things like that, are definitely always on heavy rotation. But I try to like temper that with like listening to, a lot of more like, not, I wouldn't say like dance, but some like I like Sylvan Esso. I don't know how you would describe something like electro pop a little bit, or
Yeah,
like
yeah.
indie electro pop or something like that. Yeah, and so I try to, and even a lot of world music, I guess. But yeah. So I mean, it's like consuming music is my favorite thing to do,
Mhm.
and I'm always on the hunt for something new, and something just to kind of like grab you that's unique and you've never heard before. And so yeah, it's always in flux.
Now, understandable.
Yeah, yeah.
So you touched on it being difficult writing songs or finding the
Mhm.
lyrics to everything. But with your new songs, The Good Life and The Flood, the lyrics seem to flow out, man.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
tell me about writing those and crafting those songs.
Yeah. Well, the flood is interesting because I actually, so the lyrics in that one were actually written for another song. Not in totality, but the kind of like the nugget. There's a line in it that says, and I'm actually going to screw it up because I'm not singing it.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, I'm drowning where I stand. I can't hold up the flood type thing. That was actually I had written another song. It's okay. Sorry, my dog is making his presence
No,
known.
no.
um, I had written the lyrics for that for another song that I had never recorded, but I played out a lot live, and like I was never really truly satisfied with that song, but I loved the lyrics, and so I really wanted to find another home for them, and so the flood kind of came out of that kind of came out of that one line. Um, and I really kind of mulled over what that line meant, and the lyrics kind of grew from that little idea. As far as like the good life is concerned, it was that was unique as well, I guess, in a way, because I feel like as any creative does, you always kind of fall on the same tools. You rely so much on the same tools, whether it's lyrics or songwriting or art, photography, cooking, whatever it might be. Um, and so I was traveling a little bit around the time that I wrote that, and I didn't have a guitar, but I did have this little like MIDI machine that I could play like really simple synths on, and I traveled with my little crummy drum machine, and so I was really trying to exercise a different portion of my head or my mind, I guess, creative process and not write on a guitar. And so I kind of came up with this funny little drum beat, and then wrote this kind of airy synth over it, and that was like the basis of the good life. And the lyrics that came out of that just felt, I don't know, like you sometimes you just kind of like land on this idea, and I kept humming um the little like the good life, and what does that mean, and somehow that stuck in my head, and kind of kind of kind of it grew into what it is now. Yeah, if that makes sense. Yeah.
You actually just touched on like a question that I had that I put on the reserves for a little bit
Yeah.
was like because as I was listening to it, I was like, all right, for a musician, what does the good life mean for him?
Yeah.
So that was like my next question was, what is the good life for the Bones of J.R. Jones? Yeah.
Well, but personally, I don't know. It's I feel like it's always a moving target, right? On a personal level, if it's like being able to do if I can just create music and feel satisfied with my choices and feel like I'm contributing something positive to my community, to the world, um, I would probably be pretty content, but the double side of that is that I feel like everybody hits walls, everybody experiences frustrations, and there's a lot of monotony, and and you can feel like you're treading water, a lot of the times, and with your choices, and you feel like there's potential in you that you're not realizing, and I feel like that is really like the good life is about that, like you're searching for that moment, that release that you hope to find, and I feel like you can find it for a second, but the next day it's gone again, because you're on to bigger things, bigger ideas, and you feel like you haven't realized those yet. So it's a constant battle, I think.
Understandable. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh, in terms of these new songs, does this mean a new album on the way?
Yes, yeah. Record's coming actually Friday the 13th, October the 13th. Yeah. Not ominous at all, but
Yeah.
yeah, it seems like a good choice, I guess. Yeah, the record Slow Lightning is the name of it, and should be out October 13th.
Awesome. How long did it take you to like craft the album?
Well, longer than it should have. I started writing these songs, boy, uh, 2 years ago, 3 years ago,
Mhm.
and they kind of like span over 6 months or so. You know, I'm a independent artist, and so I really have to pace out the way I spend my capital, spend my money. You know, like try to find the points where I'm like, okay, I can afford the studio this day, and in 3 months I can afford a producer, in 3 months I can do this. So like it does take a little time to like kind of like patchwork together an overall release, because you're just trying to like make the ends meet. Um, so truthfully, like the recording we did like principal recording in February of 20 it's 2023, right? February 2022. And that was just like my buddy Kiyoshi and Daniel and I and our sound engineer in a studio, and we were there for 5 days, and we did like all the principal tracking. And then after that, we took a little bit of a break, and then I got back together with Kiyoshi, who's the producer and produced the record with me, and we kind of did the overdubs and nudged it around, and all in all, it took probably about a year and a half to get the record done, and that's before the pressing, which adds another 6 months to the record production and all this other stuff. It takes forever. It's silly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Just two more questions about the album.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you try to do differently than like the ones you keep close album? I had to look at it and remember the name of the
Yeah.
title.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you try to do different for this album as opposed to your last album?
Well, so the last full length, which you said, yeah, wants to keep close, was definitely uh, at that time, that was like 2018. I really wanted to focus on like the idea of the studio process, and I really kind of like went all in and being like, okay, this is a studio record. I want to like pull out all the stops, like I hired a lot of session musicians and just really filled all the tracks to what I thought was their potential. Um, and I think overall in that sense it was a success. The This one was definitely more pared back, and I really wanted it to be more like a live band record where it's like we have these guys, these are the players, and we're playing these songs together. Which was a lot of fun. I put out an EP between Ones to Keep Close and Slow Lightning with Kiyoshi again called a Celebration, and so we kind of took the theme or the our production template of that and kind of put it on this full length that's coming out now, which was like it was more stripped back, more just what was needed for the songs, and more about just the moment of recording it, capturing that moment, and not futzing with it, later on. So yeah,
Awesome. All right.
yeah,
So you have a show coming up at the Arc
yes.
September 10th. So tell me about that show. What can people expect to hear?
Oh man, that's a good question. I don't know. I'm hoping so. I usually like my touring act.
Yeah.
I do it a couple different ways. Usually, for the longest time, I did everything solo, so it would just be me with a kick drum and singing a song and stuff like that. And but I'm doing this particular tour with a drummer, so it'll be a duo. Um, and there'll be definitely probably like 5 or 6 songs from the new record and a lot of my old favorites that I like to play out quite a bit. But the show gets pretty rowdy for a two-piece, if that's to be believed.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a lot of fun. I love one of the best things about the live shows for me. Like when I go see a live show, I love seeing like kind of an arc in terms of the set list and like the moods and the emotion that can be felt in the crowd at any one point. So I do try to touch like my whole catalog in terms of mood. So there'll be like I said, there'll be a section that's pretty rowdy, and then I really love it when it's stripped back and it's just an acoustic guitar and there's just like quiet and silence, and it's just that moment of like vulnerability that I think you don't get to experience much unless you're at a live show.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
before we started, you said that you haven't really visited Michigan much, but
No, no, sadly, no. My touring for some reason has never taken me up there as much as I would like.
mhm,
You know, my wife has has some family up there outside Detroit, so we go see them from time to time. But as far as like Ann Arbor, I years ago I did a couple shows in Kalamazoo. Yeah, I got to get up there more because I mean it looks stunning, and every time I go up there, I have such a blast. Yeah, get up there.
nice.
Yeah.
and it'll be in the fall, so you get to see the
Oh
leaves.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's
the
gonna
leaves.
remind me of home. I can't
Yeah,
wait.
it
Yeah.
reminds you of home.
Yeah.
Down there in good old New York, and
Yeah.
you gotta try
Yeah.
Zinkerman's as well. Zink,
Okay.
yeah,
Tell me about it. What is it? It's a restaurant.
it's a series. It's a chain of restaurants. So you have like
Okay.
Zinkerman's Deli, then you have
Yeah.
Zinkerman's. I believe they serve like candy, things like that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
it's a large number of restaurants spread out across Ann Arbor.
All
That,
right. Well, you got please like send me a link because
oh, for
I'm
sure.
always like honestly like any good food,
Mhm,
absolutely. I'm always on the search for good coffee. Like
mhm.
that is like priority for me as a traveling musician because the bummer about being a musician, you know, like you at night you're just in a club the whole time. You don't get to go
Mhm.
out. You don't. It's rare that you get to go out and have a good meal. So like my priority always shifts to the next morning when it's like,
Yeah.
okay, where I'm waking up, I need to find the best breakfast spot, the best coffee, and like
Oh
that's what.
man, yeah,
Yeah. So
you talking to the right guy. I can
all right,
give you a
yeah.
good
Don't
itinerary.
don't hold back from me, please. I need to know. So yeah, yeah, that's great. Thank you.
For sure, for sure. So my next question is like this is a very Michigan specific question. In terms of like, well, we touched on the food thing. When you're visiting the art, what have you heard about the art so far?
I'm flying in blind.
Oh, you're finding them blind. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard wonderful things about it through friends that have played there.
Yeah.
But you know, like that's just like, you know, touring musicians talk about different venues here and there, and like, you know, there's it's funny, like regionally, there's anytime you talk about touring with a friend, there's always there are certain venues that are like this is the spot in, you know, New York, this is the spot in, you know, Northeast Pennsylvania and so on, you know, like and so the Arc has that name, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
people talk about it, but I personally don't know anything about it. So I'm really excited to experience it. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
And I know you
Yeah.
said you'll be joining on stage with a drummer. Will there
hmm
be any guest performances as well?
Nothing planned just yet. I will be touring with a guy named Benjamin Dakota Rogers,
Mhm.
who's this like killer folk musician. And yeah, so that's he'll be on every show with me as we tour. And I've only met him through Instagram, but he plays some killer music, and I can't wait to tour with him. So it's going to be a great show.
Awesome. And my last question is there anything else that you would like the people to know?
No, no, just come on out, have a good time, you know, sing some songs. You know, I'm cannot wait for it, and it's gonna be a time to remember, hopefully. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. All
Yeah,
right. Thank you
yeah,
very much, man.
yeah. It's been great chatting with you, man.
All right.
Are
So
you gonna be at the show?
I'm going to try. I'm definitely going to try.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Okay. Well, I hope to see you there.
All
Yeah.
right.